a man with a couple of little people standing on his chest. Surprisingly, they held a microphone and said to him that he had been captured. The man screamed in terror. The little people were so frightened that they fled in all directions. The man realized that he was really tied up. He breaks the rope with all his might. Little people are thrown into the air. The man stood up. He couldn't believe what was happening in front of him. He thought he was dreaming until he was stabbed in the foot by one of the little men's spears. And then the man realized what was happening. At that moment, the other little people hooked the man's pants. The man rushed to pull his pants up, but before he could, he was pulled down. He falls to the ground and passes out. The man is tied up again and carted off to Lilliput. When the people heard of the capture of the beast, they came to see him. Finally, the man was put in a cave. He had to work every day. He was fitted with a strange device. He plowed like an ox, and the little people commended him from his chest. At that moment, the land of the little people was invaded by the enemy. The little people immediately removed the man's equipment and directed him to run back to the city. What crisis does the man face next? A giant head suddenly appeared on the castle. The giant easily pinched his enemies who kidnapped the princess. He turned around and threw them into the river. The princess walked into his hands. She was taken to a safe place. They thought it was all over. Suddenly, they heard alarm bells ringing. The palace was on fire. The giant rushed to the castle. He saw that the king was trapped inside. He tried to pinch them out with his hand, but as soon as his hand touched the window, it retracted. The fire was so hot, he shook it off. Just when the king thought it was hopeless, the giant had an idea. He pulled down his pants, and a powerful jet of water came out and instantly doused the fire and drenched the king all over. The general saw this, accused the giant of disrespect. The giant turned around. He urinated all over the general. After this incident, the giant was hailed as a savior. The king treated the giant with great hospitality and arranged for craftsmen to build the giant a villa with a view of the sea. Even the theater where the show was held had a seat for the giant. Can the giant live happily ever after? Countless shells were fired at the giant. The giant's body is immediately covered in bullet holes. It looked like he was going to die, but they didn't hurt the giant. His huge belly instantly bounced the shells back. Instead, it destroyed the enemy's own ship. Just now, the giant, general of the Lilliputians, he was ordered by the king to meet the enemy. He didn't want to fight, so he suggested to the enemy they put on a show, pretend to fight, and when it was over, they all went their separate ways. Then the giant slapped the water hard. It makes a big wave. It gives the impression that the battle is very exciting, but the enemy didn't want to go through with it. They ordered all the ships to fire on him. The giant knew that the shells couldn't hurt him. His confidence grew. He picked up all the anchors of the enemy ships with his two big hands and dragged them all away. The people of Lilliput were thrilled and cheered, and they admired the giant even more. The giant lived happily here every day, forgetting the purpose of his expedition.